How is everyone doing? Hopefully you can't hear that. The neighbors mowing their lawn. So hopefully that's not not audible. All right, we have some interesting things to talk about. A lot of cloud news actually this week. Some topics on open sources sprinkled throughout. Actually, there's some open source news in the cloud news. There is some open source news in the security. Although I put those in a different group because you'll find out why. Um, and then some general updates from just Ubuntu released some stuff from a bunch of different places. So we have some just general news on that. I don't think today will be a long episode because there's not that many. There's not that much that went on, but we'll get through it. I hope everyone is doing well. We'll start the show in just a second. Good evening, Russell. I hope your night is going well. It was actually a really fantastic day out. It was like 75, very slight breeze. It was a wonderful, wonderful day. All right. So I'm gonna break from tradition, and we're gonna start with a piece of news. Oh yeah, I better hurry up. Then I better hurry up. I can't believe that you shouldn't miss Rocket League. Go watch Rocket League. Come back, watch the replay. It's probably better and fast forward anyways. Actually, I think all of my videos are better in 1.25 speed, 100%. Whenever I watch them at that speed because I try to watch them to try to get a little bit better at it. Like, what do I dislike about the videos and whatnot. And one of the things is I wish I could talk faster and just be as clear as 1.25, but I actually did an experiment with this. If I try to talk quick, I seem like I'm trying to talk quick, and it's not as good. It's better if I talk normally and people just do 1.25 speed. That's what I have come up with. I need to recommend people that. All right. Take my time. I will. All right, let's jump into the news. So this is the tech news. I cover clouds and stuff. If this is your first time, thanks for joining. It's a little bit different than the standard ones throughout the week where I do some programming and whatnot, and we experiment with stuff. So yeah, this is our tech news. So let's go over the clouds. All right. The first thing up was this. I saw this during the week, and this week I noticed something, and I brought it up to you guys, and I found this article. How GitHub Copilot is getting better at understanding your code. I want to call GitHub out on this. I think Copilot is the best one out of all of the code generations. But this last week, it has been understandably worse. Whatever this change was, it works less well now than it did a week ago. And that's kind of sad. I'm actually, or maybe 2 weeks ago, actually, because it's been a thinking that it's like not been working as well. Anyways, so they have actually made some changes to how it works. And for me personally, it just hasn't worked as well. It hasn't been giving me results that matter. It hasn't given me results that, actually, I would say that it's actually not taking my code as well as and learning from what I've done locally. Because like one of the things that I've done locally is, I use a local project, and it used to fill that in perfectly because I have done it so many times using my local project, and it stopped being able to do that. It has gotten worse. Maybe some language. That's a good point, Russell. Maybe some improved. So that is fair statement. Rust for me got worse. I did not like it with Rust as much as I did. It's still better. It's still far ahead of the other ones, but yeah. So let's jump into security. I know I just brought this up first because I know a lot of us we had talked about it. I think maybe Saturday we had talked about it, and I wanted to show you guys because I told you I thought I had seen an article about how they improved it. They did. All right. So if you're running Cisco switches, I don't know how many of you might run Cisco switches. Again, I've limited this security to more things that I think might affect you. Cisco Small Business Series switches have buffer overflow. There's actually several of these. I'm going to post these just in case in the chat, just so that some people, if you do have this Cisco switches, you can get these. There are vulnerabilities, and there are no workarounds, but Cisco has released software updates. So the solution is patching. They offer a couple different things, but there's denial of service and there are arbitrary code execution with root privileges. So it's kind of the whole smattering. They say 9.8. I don't know how you get a 10 if this is not a 10. And the worst part is that you don't. Sometimes these are like this where you need all of them. Look how many CVEs there are. Oh my gosh, this is there were so many problems that have been out there. Anyway, sometimes it's like, well, you need to chain like 6 of these vulnerabilities together, and that's actually not true. Each one of these is independently executed. So anyways, you need to update your Cisco switches. Another thing, if you have a Wemo plug, a security firm, I have no idea how to pronounce their name, found basically where people can remotely operate these plugs by overflowing a character limit. And Wemo is not. So on their V2, they said they are not going to patch them because they're at end of life. So if you have one, I would say stop using it. Unless if it's plugged into something that absolutely does not matter if somebody turns on and off, don't use it. I don't use them anyways, but yeah. They have Costco switches, and then a reply asked if they were called Kirkland. Okay, that's pretty. Did I accidentally say Costco? I'm in Cisco. If I said Costco, I mean, this would be a Costco switch. This is the number of CVEs is what I would expect out of a Costco switch. This is a bulk CVE order. This is a Costco CVE grouping. Okay, good. I didn't think I would accidentally say Costco instead of Cisco, but all right, let's jump on to Cloud Nose. I don't think I have anything else in the security that I saw that would be applicable to you all. If I missed something, let me know. Always feel free to bring your own links and let me know if you saw something that you think would be interesting to other software engineers. In the big cloud news is probably this advertisement. Big full page. There we go. Alibaba to exit cloud business. I looked through, I searched the internet just to make sure this wasn't just one place. Bloomberg reported it, a lot of places. It seems that Alibaba it seems maybe a little bit more political, like Beijing is pushing them to. But I don't really know those politics very well, so I won't really speak on it. I just tried to make sure. It seems that Alibaba is spinning off its cloud business. It's one of the largest clouds. I want to say it's like the 4th largest. It's a pretty interesting. So we'll see. I know there's been like talk about whether AWS will spin off or things like that. So far, not. But that kind of surprised me. To change things up, I'm going to talk about Cloudflare first. Cloudflare had their developer week, so they released some stuff. This was interesting because this is something that I've always warned people. Edge, I feel, is a trap. Because a lot of times people try to push things to the edge because they're like, I'm getting that compute right there next to the people. And then they have to hit a backend service that's all the way far away anyhow. And if they actually make multiple requests from the edge, you're actually slowing your application down. Even though it's close to the consumer, those multiple requests take time. So I've always said that the edge can kind of be a trap unless there are things that it's really fantastic for. You just have to make sure that you've got it. And Cloudflare did smart placement basically of your code so that it takes those functions and smartly places it close to the backend, close to those databases and things like that it's going to have to make requests to help speed up your application. So I think that this is a really good change. It's really cool. You should see an improvement. Now, we talked about Section 2.8 a little while ago. Section 2.8 is what caused an outage where a customer got throttled when they actually shouldn't have gotten throttled. And it wasn't Section 2.8 specifically that got them throttled, but it's kind of the consequences of Section 2.8 that got them throttled. Anyways, they're doing away with Section 2.8, which was originally around because of historical reasons, because they had this they were serving and they didn't want people just to serve thousands of terabytes of images through their edge, which wasn't really designed for that. And they actually have products designed for your images and videos and things like that now, and so they want you to use those. So anyways, earlier this year, we blogged about an incident where we mistakenly throttled a customer due to internal confusion about a potential violation of a terms of service. So anyways, they have cleared up their terms of service, actually made their terms of services clearer, which I think is really good. Not many companies do that. Anyways, the 2.8 was the limitation on serving non-HTML content through their edge, because, I mean, this was their content delivery network, their CDN, and they didn't want you to serve your videos through it because now they have a thing to stream through. Anyways, over time, Cloud Network became larger and more robust with its portfolio, branded to include services like Stream, Images, and R2. These services explicitly designed to allow customers to serve non-HTML content like video, images. So anyways, they cleared up those sections. Section 2.8 actually went away altogether. And they simplified some other things of where the terms of services are. So I think that's good. Hopefully this avoids an issue like we had previously. The other nice thing that I want to call out here was Cloudflare wasn't vague on their terms of service. This is something that I have repeatedly gotten onto DigitalOcean about. And the fact is, DigitalOcean won't tell you if you're in violation of a terms of service. They'll just say your account is off, done, dusted. It's deleted. And they won't even tell you what you violated. So it's very difficult for people to understand, which is probably the biggest frustration that some people have had with DigitalOcean. Yes, I have emailed them. No, they haven't responded back to me. I'm not a paying customer, so they probably don't care, but I've asked them to clarify that. All right, more Node.js APIs in Cloudflare workers. So basically, their workers, Node.js APIs, are expanded with streams, path, and string decoders. So if you're wanting to use these things in your Cloudflare workers, they're serverless, Lambda-ish things, you can now use them. So that's awesome. I think that's pretty cool. I don't know if any of you actually use Cloudflare. Not sure. I don't know of anybody in my chat that uses Cloudflare, even though I cover them. You at least are up to date with them. All right, Cloudflare queues got one thing that I think is actually a pretty big deal if you're using their queues. Basically, Cloudflare queues had this problem where you wouldn't actually scale the consumers, so there would start to become this back pressure if you were doing messages faster than the consumers could consume them. And basically, this is explicitly with explicit acknowledgement. And basically, they now enabled this where you can get systems asynchronously with guaranteed delivery, where they scale the consumer concurrency. So they basically make multiple consumers. This again requires that you use their whole platform, which means it leverages their functions and things like that. So it's a good change. It's a good change. It should mean that your queues scale better if that was something that you had hit. All right. Our next cloud isn't one we really ever talk about, but we did mention it a couple months ago. There was a Datadog outage, a pretty serious one, where they were gone out for over a day. Now, I have not seen a post-mortem on this, and I was kind of relieved when I saw, not this. So this is the incident report. We've all seen this. All right. I saw this. Which wasn't interesting. They actually got their hands on something that was distributed to a couple customers. There wasn't something posted, not that I found so far. And so he went through and broke down what they posted in their thing that they sent. Now, one of the things that is astonishing, Datadog is a monitoring stack. And the fact is, it took them an hour and 31 minutes to actually detect it. Time to detection is 31 minutes, but it actually got worse from 31 minutes to an hour and 31 minutes, where they didn't actually detect that it was getting worse. And so, yeah, it was an hour and 23 minutes. In all fairness, we could question that it should be an hour and 23 minutes. Which actually seems reasonable, which is kind of appalling. The interesting thing here is they actually run on 3 clouds. I didn't know this, but they actually run on 3 clouds, Azure, GCP, and AWS. They run multiple Kubernetes clusters, and in each of those clouds, they run in multiple regions. I forget the exact number of regions. I want to say they run in 5 regions in each. And even then, they had an entire system failure. I'm going to post this in... Russell, that's cruel, but yes, actually true. If they're using their own product, maybe they didn't log everything as it's too expensive. Cruel but true. Datadog is expensive. It is expensive. Let me give you guys this link. I found it interesting. Again, I can't verify because I did not get my hands on the outage, the postmortem myself. So this is secondhand, but it did have some interesting things. Basically, there was a security patch that did pretty much nothing, except it did restart systemd. The appalling thing here that happened, that I think is probably the big takeaway. Again, they didn't actually go into any remediation. Is they rolled this out to their entire network, which basically reset Calico, not Calico, Cilium. Reset Cilium. And it made it so that Cilium didn't know of any of the other hosts, reset their network lists. And it took down all of their Kubernetes clusters, all of them, and basically also took down their control plane. So they didn't have a way to fix it because their control plane was dead. I think one of the smart things is to not roll out everything. So basically this is what happened in region 1, a diagram. They shut down the first nodes or restarted them. They became unhealthy and then they continued on. Usually you stop an upgrade at this point. So hopefully that's one takeaway they took at this point was you do a rolling upgrade, and if it's not working at this point, you don't continue on because it's just a way to lose your entire class. Honestly, with knowing that this is possible, I don't know how they haven't had an outage of this magnitude till now. Yeah. So, anyways, I'll let you guys go further on that. Yeah. Anyways, that's about it. All right, so we have just a little bit from AWS. Honestly, I didn't see. I didn't. Oh, I accidentally switched here. I didn't see a whole lot in their list of things that were really that groundbreaking. You know, AWS Control Tower launches 28 new proactive controls. So if you're using Control Tower, which probably only if you're like a SaaS are you actually using Control Tower. It's pretty and like almost a hardware SaaS. Like, um, are you actually using Control Tower? If you're doing like multi-account AWS, would you want to use Control Tower? Yeah, and other than that, it's really not that big of a deal. Amazon Athena now supports IPv6 endpoints. If you ever wanted to use IPv6, not many do. So that wasn't a big deal. But Amazon had two things that I think were interesting that I'd like to touch on. They released two open source projects. Both play a part in security. So we have Cedar Policy, and we have Snap Change. So we'll talk about Cedar Policy, Cedar Policy really quickly. This is a policy language that you can use for your application. So this contains the implementation of the Cedar policy language, and it lets you write and enforce authorization policies in your applications. So this is actually pretty interesting, especially for me. I'm kind of interested in seeing this. You can write policies that specifies your application's fine-grained permissions. Your application can then authorize access requests by calling Cedar's authorization engine. So they have a policy language and they have a policy engine that allows you to separate this out from application code. So it's actually pretty cool. It's written in Rust. I then also question why they let go so many Rust developers. They let go a couple really fantastic Rust developers, much better than myself. I know it's hard to believe that there's better Rust developers than me, but yeah, there are. There are. There are a lot of better developers than me, just at plain level. So anyways, it's a whole framework. There are where's the repositories? There's Rust and there's Java support. AWS actually uses this internally in AWS themselves at this point. Yeah, but because it is a spec, you can write it for another language if you wanted to. Right now it's just Java and Rust. But that's pretty cool. I'm excited about that. This is actually authorization in your app is actually kind of difficult. There's not been a really good way to do it without writing some custom stuff a lot of the times. I know that Ori has an authorization engine as well at this point. I haven't used it yet, but yeah. Now, Snap Change is another thing that they released. We're not going to go too much into this, but Snap Change provides the ability to load raw memory dump and register state into a KVM virtual machine for execution. So basically, you can take snapshots for replaying. I think this is probably really important for large companies that provide data centers as a service. And if you want to actually investigate something that happened in a virtual machine, you could take a snapshot and replay from that instance. So that might be really important for forensic investigations and things like that. So yeah, I think that's pretty good. All right, let's talk about GCP. GCP, Google Cloud. All right, so in here, I didn't see a whole lot. And in the what's new, there was only two things here. Cloud Workstations is now GA. We talked about Cloud Workstations. I don't really know. I'm sure that there's people that use Cloud Workstations. I especially think that it's maybe an easy way for people that need to make sure that one of the things is like if you deal with HIPAA and you want to make sure your stuff stays on your servers, you can make sure it doesn't leave your data center by making people use the cloud workstations, and not allowing them to move it onto their personal laptops. It's a nice separation. And then, yeah, there's introducing the date time selector in log analytics for cloud logging. I don't know that these are the biggest deal. Their I/O thing just happened, so I expect most of their big things, which were all around AI, to be there. Did you guys see anything else? Or should I move on to Azure? The biggest piece of Azure news is their upgrade from WAF 2 to Policy Engine. So the general availability is seamlessly upgrade your application gateway v2 WAF configuration to a policy. This is awesome. I keep commenting on how they keep trying to upgrade their security for your applications, and a WAF, or a web application firewall, is your first line of defense against a DDoS first attack. It's a great way to exclude places that are currently attacking you. It is your first line of defense. All right, so why is this a big deal? Well, Application Gateway v2 WAF, while it was great and all, it had some problems. As everything that you first create. Well, I guess V1 had even more problems. V2 fixed some of those problems, and in this third generation, it's getting even better. So it's bringing simpler management experience, more scale. I haven't used their WAF a whole lot, even though I've seen some of the DDoS attacks that it has mitigated. This new one is supposed to scale better, for whatever that means. Again, like I said, I haven't used their WAF, so take everything I say with a grain of salt. It's supposed to scale better, have more rich feature set, and simplified management experience. I think this is actually probably the biggest deal, because a lot of people aren't web application firewall experts. Having a simple management and configuration and control of it is important, so that people actually use it. If you make it too complicated, people just turn it off. Like, there are so many, AppArmor for Linux. It's great, but it's too complicated, and most people just don't use it. So let's talk about SE Linux and how many people actually use it or just turn it off. All right, so in Azure NetApps files, you can now edit volumes. Cool. Azure Backup Reports now include support for more workloads. So if you're using Azure Backup Reports, they now support Postgres, Azure Blobs, and Azure Disk. So if you were waiting on that because you used that and needed it, it's there. I can't say anything more. In public preview, optimize your workloads for reliability using new webbook template in Azure Advisor. Okay, so this is actually something I don't know a whole lot on, but this looks to be, from my understanding of me digging through it, basically a template for a resilient application on Azure. So it looks to be basically like a template application that has this like checklist of things to do to make sure your application is resilient. So yeah, I haven't used it. I don't know much more than that about it. I clicked on some stuff to read about it, and it sounds interesting. I wish more clouds would do stuff like that, trying to make it as simple as possible to have a highly resilient, highly scalable, secure application on their cloud. That should be their goal. Yeah. Okay, so this was in Azure. I just liked it because I'm such a horrible person, but they talk about how Rust is helping them move Azure security, and how their WAF and things like that, they're now what they call policy, is leveraging Rust. So, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. I liked it. The other thing I wanted to call out is something we talked about in GCP was this confidential compute. Azure has now also released it with these confidential VMs that basically encrypt everything from the hardware up. This is the same that leverages the AMD technology to encrypt it through the processor. So, processor memory, your memory, the memory, everything's encrypted to you. So you have this confidential VM. Yep. And, yeah. So and another thing is Rust as the path forward. They're basically Azure is replacing C things with Rust as they go. All new projects and stuff are going in that direction. So I think it's pretty cool. So I wanted to bring that up. All right. Microsoft build. Okay, innovation through Microsoft Commercial Marketplace. There were some updates to the Microsoft Commercial Marketplace for AI offerings. I don't know much more about that. I didn't read everything through this. But basically, there's some new offerings and abilities in their marketplace for AI. So if you're trying to look into that and trying to leverage that, Azure Marketplace has some stuff for you. All right. That was it for the clouds. I know that I rushed through that. I know. But yeah, now I have some open source stuff to go over with you all. And I did not have an article to react to, so unless if you guys have one, I won't be, and we'll just talk about these open source things and then be done. That's up to you guys. If you do have an article you'd like me to read, like me to go over and give you my humble opinions on, I don't know. I don't really have humble opinions. I have opinions. I don't think opinions can be humble. You can be humble in your opinions and admit that other people could have better opinions, but you can't have humble opinions. So yeah, I'll be humble in giving my opinions. Probably not even that though. Can't guarantee. All right, this first one for the open source is all about Arch Linux, our favorite Linux operating system, the one that I fail to update successfully every single time. It screws up my boot and I have to go in and fix it. So I don't know, there's something wrong with it. Probably my fault. Okay, this Friday morning, the Git packaging migration will start until Sunday. I didn't know this, but Arch has been using SVN up till this Sunday. Is that terrifying? 2023. It's still using SVN? I didn't know this was a thing. But we all should welcome Arch into the 21st century. Welcome, Arch. Welcome into the goodness. They just skipped Mercurial and jumped straight to Git. No steps, no baby steps. So, anyways, that is happening. I don't know that this affects anybody. Let's go on. All right, this is something interesting. Cluster API is a dear project to me that I do like. I like the people that work on it. I like what they're trying to do with it. But it's always had one non-goal. If you watch my video on it, it had a goal of it's never going to, or their goal was never to support clusters that were created without Cluster API. And this is the first stab at adopting a already created cluster into Cluster API. Now, there is a good old warning. This is highly experimental and should only be used for educational or research purposes, but there is an attempt to do it. It also, I got to watch a little bit of an example of a demo of it actually working. I think this is really cool, especially for people that want to migrate to this. And it's a little daunting to have to like stand up new clusters and load balance and migrate the things over there when you could actually just consume. So if that's you, I'm going to dump this in the chat. If you have Kubernetes, if you'd like to use Cluster API now, but haven't, well, don't use this because it's experimental, but it shows that it can work. All right, Stability AI released a Stable Studio. So Stable Studio is basically they open sourced their Studio version. So if you ever tried to use oh yeah, it's like the Dream Studio. So they made Dream Studio, which is their generative art. You can now run this yourself, which is basically just a nice wrapper around their API, which you could use for free anyways. So yeah, that's awesome. It's out there. Only problem I see is that it's in TypeScript, so I have absolutely no idea what they do in it. But other than that, it's under the MIT license, so it's approved. Approved. Now, Ubuntu took a stab at Docker today. Not today, a couple days ago. May 17th. So, not today, as it's May 21st. But a couple days ago, Docker took Ubuntu took a swipe at Docker. Now, you may love or hate snaps. I generally actually dislike snaps, but I have always tried to tell people snaps are effectively a container. They're not a Docker container. They are not an OCI container. That's a better way of putting it. They are not an OCI container, but they are a container. They're a sandbox, and they use a lot of the same technologies underneath if you're looking at how they operate. Now, Ubuntu continues basically saying snaps are better, and they released this nice graphic so we know so we know that snaps are better. Now, they go through some of the things that I don't think actually matter. And the reason is snaps are designed for a local application, and OCI containers are more meant for Kubernetes. Now, they might make a good argument of why running them locally matters, but not all of this is even true. They say host OS here, and Docker is only Linux, period. They say snap here is all of them, and it's also only Linux. It works on WSL in Linux, which is a VM of Linux, which is the same for Docker on Mac and Windows. They work in a VM in Linux. Actually, I think containers now have native support on Windows, but I've never made it in a Windows container. That blows my mind still. So anyways, the other thing is, yeah, container base OS is Ubuntu on snaps. So that's maybe a downside. It doesn't have as much flexibility, but it has some cool things like transactional updates and release channel tracking. But again, this is where I would argue to Ubuntu that these are more of local application things and not how you manage a container in a cloud. So I don't know. I'd take this for a grain of salt. I would take it for a grain of salt. It was a fun comparison to read, though. And I find it fun when these open source people take little swipes at each other. I think these are fantastic articles, and I'm glad that they do them because they make you think about what really matters when I'm running a container. Does transactional updates? No. I mean, we say that, we have immutable infrastructure. Transactional updates or replacing the container are effectively the same thing in a Kubernetes instance. So yeah, you're right. It doesn't support it, but maybe that's not a big deal. So anyways, yeah. All right. I saw this. I don't know. We'll move on. Let's talk about this. Meta released, that's right, I didn't call them Facebook for the first time. Meta released Code Compose, this thing right here. Now, I haven't been able to find a way to actually use it, but as soon as I do, yeah, we'll give it a try. But Code Compose is their Copilot competition, and that's about it. Everybody's coming up with one. I'm actually glad everyone's coming up with one. Now, one thing I have to say about Code Compose, GitHub Copilot, one thing that I have seen is a couple things. First, there is research that people write more insecure code when using Copilot, the better one. There's also research that says it's actually buggier, and I didn't bring them into today just to keep it. I'm trying to keep this short so the news isn't so long and just with my opinion and on random things. But there's also a lot of companies that are banning the use of ChatGPT and those types of things for legal reasons, for data security reasons, and things like that. So yeah, you need to think about it before you just adopt one of these tools. And you need to know that you have a good engineering team that's going to know how to do secure coding. All right. Also, check this out. Check this out. 16,000 GPUs. 16,000 GPUs. Now we know why GPUs are so expensive. I actually think the future to training, I think a lot of this generative AI stuff is going to come down to almost like TLS, where there's very well known algorithms and they're going to come out with very, very specific hardware for training. It's not going to be done on general GPUs. It's going to be done on very specific hardware. I think for efficiency, it's going to need to be. Is OpenAI releasing a private chat GPT? There are more private options. I think if you pay for it. Maybe there's a business plan. Yeah, I found this. OpenAI preview business plan for ChatGPT launches new privacy controls. Now, this doesn't mean they don't have your data. To be clear, this doesn't mean that they don't have your data and they can't leak it. It just means that when you give it a piece of code, it won't regurgitate that code per se. It won't get trained on and regurgitate it to another client, to another person, in theory. That's what it means. It doesn't mean that their servers don't have it and that their server can't leak it if they have a big leak like they did previously. Because that's exactly what happened to Samsung and why it's banned from use in Samsung. How long until ChatGPT appliances and servers racks? I obviously I could always be wrong. So please don't make any investing advice based off of this. I think ChatGPT and OpenAI will go bankrupt in 10 years. Possibly. Probably not, because they'll survive through Azure. They'll survive through Azure, because they provide APIs and stuff. The using ChatGPT, I think, has been banned in so many companies at this point that the people that are going to pay for it, I don't know if they'll be able to make enough money to train new models. And the problem without training new models, it won't get any better. There was another article that I read this week about, there was two articles that were interesting. One group of students failed some stuff because ChatGPT got it wrong. Another group failed because they used ChatGPT to write their papers. And so the other thing that's coming up is that there's smaller models that are getting 80-90% of the way there that are open source. And if somebody wanted to pay $1 million to train a larger model, those might compete right on with ChatGPT. They're just doing it with a much smaller data set that's cheap, like it's $100. They're getting 75% of ChatGPT with $100 training on a Raspberry Pi. What does that mean for OpenAI? I don't see how it's worth $40 billion. Yes, yes, Russell. That's what I'm saying. It will just be acquired into another cost center within Microsoft. It won't go bankrupt. I rescind that statement as it has use. And as far as like an API, I think it has some really cool use. I've actually thought about making a game based off of it. I think that would be a fun game to play. And with ChatGPT 3.5 Turbo, it's fairly cheap. So yeah, I think there are uses for it. I don't think that it's as I don't know. Again, I could be wrong. I just don't think it's as revolutionary as people have thought of it to be. I don't open up Visual Studio Code and it starts writing code for me. I don't think, oh, I'd like to have an application that allows people to, swipe left or right on other people, and it does it. It doesn't do that at all. You actually have to know what you're wanting to do, what technologies you want to pick and why, and leverage it, and you have to know how to securely program and things like that, or else it's useless. I don't know. I think it's a great tool. I really do. I think even Copilot is fairly good, especially if it gets a little bit better for Rust again. Um, but yeah, I think you're absolutely right. When the investors were talking about NFTs, it feels very similar to me. It feels very much like, oh wow, it's awesome. ChatGPT did some awesome things, but then we go into this overhype mode where we take this awesome thing and just like uh, like uh, people are like, it's going to, yeah, I don't know. It doesn't do anything without being asked to do something. It doesn't, and then even that, it just produces text. That's all it does. So it doesn't go and control things. You can't say, "Hey, go, do this errand for me," or even control, do my banking for me. It doesn't do those things. It just generates text, and it can't do those other things. So it's very limited, and it's useful. I will give it that. I just 40 billion is a lot for a company that does something that six other companies can do now, training on $100. So that's my feel, Russell. That's my feel, is that maybe, just maybe, AI is being hyped up a little too much. It just feels, for what it does, for what it is, for what it is, like, I actually know some of the algorithms. I keep up with it some because I find machine learning to be interesting. Um, and I like math. To me, it feels like that thing that is being hyped up, that you ask people like what it's going to do, and they say a lot of vague terms that in theory an AI could take all of our jobs if it was actually an intelligence, and had the ability to do those things, but it's not. And what we have right now is really good statistics. Like, it's really fantastic statistical analysis. And that's great, but that's all it is. It's a box that knows how to translate from English to Chinese, and you put English in, and it does that really, really well. Um, but it can't think of anything. That's not what it's doing. It's just going through a set of if statements to get to a result. Um, so yeah. Anyways, that's really all I had for today. Um, would you guys be interested in me bringing up those articles? I don't know whether I should. I have like two. I feel like it's being hyped so much that I don't cover AI as much as I could, as much as I follow it personally. Because I'm like, well, all the news is about AI. If you watch Google's event, every word an executive said had AI twice in each sentence. Like, literally, they're like, our new AI has such advanced AI, you won't even know it's AI that's talking to you. You'll think it's a person. And you're like, wow, one sentence, three uses of the word AI. And so I feel like I don't want to add to that pile. I don't want to be one of those people that just. I want to make sure that I'm helping where I am. Okay. I'll maybe make an AI section. I feel like there's enough news to have a little AI section right after the cloud section where I'll go over interesting articles that came up, because like this week there was actually several places where ChatGPT caused errors, where I think you really need to be careful when using it. Anyways, I'll let you guys get going. Thanks for watching the news. I hope that you guys find this news helpful, informative. I'll see you guys Tuesday. Tuesday I have something fun planned for Tuesday, and we'll have some fun doing it. And yeah, anyways, I will see you guys later. And thanks for watching. You guys are